Hello, I'm Mark with the Church of Christ that meets in Beaverton. We're here located just down from the library, 11775 Southwest 5th Street. You can see us on the web, beavertonchurchofchrist.net. I'm glad you're here. In the Bible, we have examples of people leaving home. Some people were forced to leave home. That would be like Daniel and his companions back in the book of Daniel. They were young Hebrew men that were basically taken from their homeland and taken to Babylon and, well, re-educated there. I mean, and as far as we know, they may have never seen their family again the rest of their lives. So there's a group of young men that are forced from home. Joseph would be another example. There's a young man that is sold into slavery by his brothers. He wasn't getting ready to leave home. He was taken from home by force. There are times in the Bible, though, where we have examples of people that leave home and they're really completely unprepared when they leave home. Book of Luke, chapter 15. Luke 15 and verse 12, it says, "The younger of them," a man had two sons, "and the youngest of the two, 'Father, give me the share of the estate that's mine.' And so he did. He divided his wealth among them. Not many days later, that younger son gathered everything together, went on a journey into a distant country. He left home. I'm leaving home. I'm tired of living at home. I'm going out, going to get on my own." And it says he squandered his estate with loose living. There was a young man, a young person that was completely unprepared to leave home. Tell you what, leaving home is a great time in life. Leaving home, whether you're leaving just to move out, whether you're leaving to go to college, leaving home is a really neat, special time in life. And I mean, the Bible talks about that, you grow up, you mature, you marry, a man leaves father and mother and cleaves to his wife, and that's a good, healthy thing to get out on your own. But we need to be prepared. We need to be prepared for that. I remember someone saying as they wrote 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 3, "For the time already past is sufficient for you to have carried out the desire of the Gentiles, having pursued a course of sensuality, lust, drunkenness, carousing, drinking parties. And all this, they are surprised that you do not run with them into the same excess." Someone read that and they just put on that, like in the side reference of their Bible, college. That's what college is like. And that's true. That's true. You will find that in college. Most universities, you will find, if you want to find an atmosphere like that of drinking parties, carousing, sensuality, and people being surprised that you're not joining them in all of that. The Bible is filled with godly advice from parent to child. In the book of Proverbs, it is godly advice from father to son. Chapter 4, verse 1 of Proverbs, where it says, "The father telling his son, 'I give you sound teaching. Do not abandon my instruction.' Chapter 1 and verse 8, 'Hear, my son, your father's instruction.' And it also says in verse 10, 'My son, of sinners entice you.'" Almost that father is preparing his son for when he goes out into the world on his own, or for situations when the son is on his own and the father's not around. And so, hey, I know sin is going to show up. I know temptation is going to show up. And I know people that are not very ethical are going to show up and try to entice you. And so I'm trying to prepare you the best way I can through really good advice and instruction. And there's a lot of incentives as far as the Proverbs talk about, hey, if you'll go with the good instruction, you'll find life and you'll find peace, and it will guard you and protect you, and you'll find happiness, and you'll avoid all the pitfalls of what happens to people that are lazy, people that are irresponsible, the adulterer, the drunkard. You avoid just the tragic life of many of the people out there, people that did not really listen to what their mom and dad were telling them. If you've been fortunate enough to be born into a family where you were given good instruction like that, then basically since you've been a child, your mom and dad have been preparing you for the moment when you leave home, strike out on your own, and to make your mark in the world. The Bible emphasizes that parents need to be incredibly diligent about preparing their kids for the real world, preparing their kids for temptation and bad influences and bad companions. And so the child is able to resist those sort of things. Book of Deuteronomy, I mean, we have some really old passages that go all the way back, near the time when the Ten Commandments were given, within 40 years of that. And in Deuteronomy chapter 6, it says in verse 7 about God's words being on our heart. And those words, the text says, you shall teach them diligently to your sons, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. That is, make sure you teach God's commandments to your kids frequently and often. Proverbs 22:6 encourages parents to train up a child in the way he should go. That is, just don't say, hey, child, there's the world out there, you figure it out on your own. I mean, that's kind of like throwing them to the wolves, but rather it's, hey, I'm going to give you some really good instruction here so you're able to make an informed decision, a good decision. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 4, fathers, instruct your children, bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. At the same time, we have all those passages where parents are exhorted and admonished to teach their children biblical truths. Equally true is that children, a child, young people, need to be very fast on the uptake when that instruction is given. When mom and dad are teaching, I need to be there listening. I mean, I need to be really quick to realize this is one of those moments. I need to be smart enough to realize, that they're giving me something really important now. I need to listen right now. This is one of those moments of whether I listen to this or not, what I do with this, my whole future may hang on whether I'm listening right now, whether I'm really listening to some good advice, where I'm really getting some good biblical instruction. They're trying to teach me about an attitude to have. They're trying to give me some good instruction on patience, or how to handle temptation, or how to keep myself pure, or things like that. Man, I need to be listening right now at that moment. Now, some of the great young people we find in the Bible, one of the things that they had in common was that not only did they take advantage of good parental instruction, but they also had equally prepared themselves. They had been making their own preparations. Book of Ezra chapter 7 and verse 10, we're given a verse where it says, for Ezra had set his heart to study the law of the Lord, that is to know what the Bible said, to practice it, to live by it, and to teach it. He would know it well enough that he could teach it to others. In the book of Daniel chapter 1 and verse 8, it said Daniel had made up his mind that in a certain area he was not going to defile himself, that he was not going to compromise when he was presented with something that would not be right for him to do. Which means a practical application would mean that as a young person, I need to have like a ready answer for when people come to me with offers of temptation, that God says, I don't want you taking that offer. And giving an answer that glorifies God. Too many times people give answers like, when like they're offered illegal drugs or something like that, well, I can't do that, or I'm afraid of getting caught. And while that's true, that's not necessarily an answer that glorifies God. An answer that glorifies God would be, hey, I've got a great life. I don't need that. I don't need that. I like reality. I like the reality that God has given me. I like the blessings that God has given me. I enjoy living in real life. I don't need an escape. I don't need an escape. I don't need something that lowers my inhibitions. I don't need that. I don't need something that loosens my tongue, okay? I'm doing fine right now. I don't need something that does that. I'm not going to mess with the wonderful body that God gave me. I'm not going to mess with the wonderful brain that God gave me. I'm going to use that to create for me a good living. I'm going to use that to create for me a good marriage and a good life and a good family and to be a good parent. I'm going to use my brain and my body properly, and I'm going to use those to create a good life for myself. I'm going to glorify God with that. I find God and I find living and I find doing what is right so stimulating and so encouraging. I don't need something artificial. I'm able to deal with I'm able to deal with whatever problems are out there, whatever negative things are in the world. I'm able to deal with that without having to take an artificial, temporary escape in the drugs or alcohol or something like that. I don't need that. I would also have a ready response to people that are going to ask you why you're a Christian. Especially if you're young, they're going to ask you, why are you a Christian? 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 15, but sanctify Christ as Lord in your hearts, being ready to make a defense to everyone who asks you to give an account for the hope that is within you, yet with gentleness, don't like lose control, and reverence and respect. I would have a ready answer for, well, why are you a Christian? Well, I've looked at all the evidence here. Let me show you some things. Let me show you some things why I believe the Bible is the Word of God. Let me show you an amazing prophecy back here. Let me show you something in the Bible that people did not realize scientifically centuries after it was stated here, that the earth is a circle or that the earth hangs upon nothing. Let me show you some amazing things in the Bible. Let me show you the prophecies about Jesus centuries before he was born that speak of minute detail about what would happen to him. Let me show you some prophecies about ancient cities, like the city of Tyre in the book of Ezekiel, and how that prophecy was fulfilled. Can I show you some amazing things in the Bible? Can I show you some amazing things about Jesus, about the character of Jesus, and about the teachings of Jesus? That's why I'm a Christian. My faith is not a cross your fingers. My faith is not a wish. My faith is not an escape. The reason I believe in God, the reason I believe the Bible, the reason I believe that Jesus is the Son of God is because that's where all the evidence points. And I just want to obey and do the truth. I just want to follow the truth. That's my allegiance, is to what's the truth. That's where it's at. And so I would have kind of ready responses for, hey, why do you believe in God? Why do you believe the Bible is His Word? Why do you believe that Jesus is who He claimed to be? Why do you believe He was raised from the dead? Why do you belong to the Church of Christ? Why do you belong to that? Hey, let me show you. Let me show you that Jesus talked about building a church, Matthew 16:18. The Bible talks about the churches of Christ, Romans 16:16. There is an actual pattern in the Bible as far as for what to do to be saved. Hear the gospel, believe it, repent, confess, to be baptized. You'll find that in the book of Acts, Acts 2, Acts 8, Acts 16, Acts 10. Okay. There's also things that Christians did when they came together on the first day of the week, Acts 20, verse 7, communion, an offering, 1 Corinthians 16, singing, Ephesians 5, verse 19, prayer, preaching. There's actually a work that God wanted the church to do, evangelism, spreading the gospel to the world, edifying its members, benevolence for its members, okay? The church is not like a social club or it's kind of not like something like that. It's not like just a nonprofit. It is the family of God, the household of God, and it's described in the Bible. And pretty much all of God's work is done on the local level, in that local congregation. That's really where all the work is done. And let me show you how the church is organized, that its only head is Christ, Ephesians 1, 22 and 23, that it has elders, and they're also called pastors or shepherds, and they have definite qualifications, and they shepherd each local congregation, and each local congregation is independent and self-governing. 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 2, shepherd the flock of God among you. And so, no, there's no sort of state, national, regional headquarters, but we just have We just have local congregations shepherded by elders or pastors or bishops with members and deacons and someone preaching. And that's just God's wisdom. Very simple, very streamlined, not a whole lot of, not much red tape at all, not much machinery, but a very effective system to convert people, to help people learn about God and strengthen them. And so I would kind of have some red responses for those things. As you go off to college, as you go off into the world, people are going to ask you certain things about certain things that the Bible says are sinful. Why don't you drink? Why don't you drink alcohol? And you could say, hey, I've never seen anyone being able to handle it. Wine is a mocker, Proverbs chapter 20. The first thing alcohol attacks is your sense of judgment. I don't think I can afford to lose that. It unlooses my tongue. I'm going to say and do things that are not wise. And I don't need it. I don't need artificial stimulation like that. I enjoy my life. I like my reality, and I don't need to escape. And I don't need anything artificial to make me unwind either, because I've learned from many people that have drunk in the past that it doesn't help you solve your problems. It only tends to create marital fights, relationship problems, etc. Just don't need it. Just don't need it. I find God, I find my wife far more intoxicating than something artificial like that. People are going to ask you certain things about, well, what do you think about someone who's homosexual? And I think it's important to note that it's not us, it's not Christians against homosexuals per se. It is simply that God's people are against any immorality because God is against any sexual immorality. And so I would not be in favor of homosexuality any more than I would be in favor of adultery, because the Bible puts them in the same list. 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 9, do not be deceived, neither fornicators, people that don't respect God's laws as far as on sexuality, where God has placed sex within marriage, and they don't respect that law, that's a fornicator, someone having sex prior to marriage. And that's, you can't do that without using somebody. You're using somebody, and they're using you. Idolaters, adulterers, the effeminate, or homosexuals, and it says they shall not inherit the kingdom of God. Don't be deceived. And so that's why I'm not a fan of that. That's why I don't support that lifestyle. That's why I don't say it's okay. God doesn't say it's okay. I'm not in favor of that any more than I'm in favor of adultery. It's in the same category. And I don't think there's very many people in favor of adultery, but if one is okay, the other is okay. Okay, the other is okay. A person might somehow say something like, well, they're born that way. And my response to that would say, you know what? I view people bigger than that. I don't have a narrow view of people like that. I don't have a restricted view of people that they're robots, that they're controlled by nothing more than just biology or genetics or whatever. I don't have a narrow view, restricted view of people like that. I have a bigger view of people. I view people created in God's image and having a spirit and a soul and having free will. How do you view people? And that's one response I would have. When someone tries to argue that someone is born a certain way and born in a way that the Bible says, no, they're not born in that way, that's a choice. And I would just, no, I don't have that. I don't have a small view of people like that, well, you're just locked in. And I guess that's what you have to be. Just like I don't think people are locked into being anything that's not good for them. This is the one life you get. This is the one life you get, and you can achieve your potential here in all the right areas. With the help of my parents, I would find a good local congregation where I'm headed. Maybe if I'm heading for a job or I'm heading for a college, I would make sure that I found a good church there. I mean, that would, If I couldn't find a good church in that college town, I probably would not go to that college. I would probably not move there. That would not be good for me. I need a good spiritual atmosphere. I need good people to be around. Life is too short to go somewhere and be lonely and really not have any good spiritual reinforcement. I would probably pick another school. And it's not like there's a a short supply of colleges. There's tons of colleges out there wanting you to go there. And I would get immediately involved. And I would go out there, I'd introduce myself to the members there, to the elders there, to the preacher there. I would probably have a letter of recommendation with me from the congregation where I'm at, introducing me like, here's who I am. And maybe in that letter, hey, he's a good guy. He can lead singing, or he can give an invitation, or he can preach. Get him involved. And so the congregation doesn't have to kind of wonder like, well, who is this guy? That immediately from that letter, they know exactly who I am. There's references there. There's phone numbers they can call like, hey, this guy showed up. Yeah, he's a great guy. Put him to work. So that I'm not really wasting any time, so I can immediately be plugged into the local work. You know, at some point, usually people bring friends home from school to meet their parents. And I think that's good. That's good. Hey, I'm going to, you know, it's Thanksgiving weekend, or it's Thanksgiving holiday, it's Christmas holiday, whatever. Maybe it's spring break, going to pop home. And I got some friends, maybe they don't have a place to go, and I'm going to bring my friends with me, and we're going to stay with my parents. When you introduce your friends to your parents, have your arm around your parents. You know, be hugging them. Express affection for them. Say, this is my mom. Give her a kiss on the cheek. Or this is my dad, and squeeze him and give him a hug with a big smile on your face. That's a way of honoring them. Honor your father and mother. Don't be aloof. Don't roll your eyes. Don't be embarrassed of your parents. Be proud of them, especially if they're faithful Christians. There's a lot to be proud about. I mean, that's a great accomplishment for living that long and still being a faithful child of God. Let your parents know that you love and appreciate them. And let your friends see that. Now, the reason I say that is that years ago, when I was single and dating, and when I was not a Christian, if someone like a friend of mine, boy or girl, expressed love for their parents, then I basically knew, you know, they've got a good head on their shoulders. And, you know, their mom and dad really are concerned about them. Especially if it was a girl. If the girl brought her parents out and I could tell that she was proud of them, then man, you know, I want to make sure that, you know, I keep everything proper because I could tell her parents were really concerned. But when I run into guys and when I run into girls that, you know, like I hate my parents, or roll their eyes when their parents, or criticize their parents in front of me, well, I could tell that that boy or that girl was like a fool. And they could be manipulated. They could be used. So how you interact with your parents does send a strong message to the world and your friends. It either says, hey, you know, this is somebody who has their head on their shoulders. Okay, this is somebody that you're not going to be able to trick or deceive. This is someone you're not going to be able to drive a wedge between them and their parents. When there's dishonor, though, hey, you can probably drive a wedge between them and their parents. I would, now, when you're young, I would take some time to interview, especially before I went off to college. I would take some time to interview your parents and get a clear understanding of who they are. I would ask them every question I can think of, how they met, how were they raised, things like that. I would particularly, if they're Christian parents, I would ask them the circumstances in which they became a Christian. Who shared the gospel with them? When were they baptized? Things like that. Now, I say this because when you go off to college, sometimes people are going to bring this argument to you if you're a Christian. The only reason you're a Christian is because your parents were a Christian. But if you know your parents' conversion story, you can say, no, you're barking up the wrong tree there. My parents were not always Christians. In fact, my parents may not have even been raised in a Christian home. You know, this is what my dad's family was like. This is what my mom's family was like. This is what they heard. This is, here, let me tell you about the message they heard. And right there, you go right into the gospel. Because so many people have this idea that the only reason you're a Christian is because you live in America and maybe your parents are Christians, but if you'd been born in India, you'd ended up a Hindu or whatever. And no, that's not the case. That's not the case. The Bible is filled with people, and real life is filled with people as well. Both the Bible and real life are filled with people that were not raised in Christian homes, that were raised in all sorts of different homes, pagan homes or whatever, who became Christians. Acts 2, Acts 8, an Ethiopian eunuch becomes a Christian, a Roman soldier in Acts chapter 10, a Roman jailer in Acts chapter 16, a businesswoman, Acts chapter 16, some very immoral Corinthians, Acts chapter 18 and verse 8. And so, in fact, here in this congregation that I preach for, I would say at least half of the members were not raised in Christian homes. At least half of the members grew up in a home where they were not taught about God. And so this idea, the only reason you're a Christian because your parents are Christian or the environment you're raised in, that's pretty false. So if you know your parents' conversion story, you can kind of go back to them and say, hey, let me tell you about my mom and dad. Let me tell you what they were like. Let me tell you, they were this, they were that, whatever. They were in the world, etc. They were in this sin or that sin. Here's what they heard. Here's the message that they heard. Here, let me show you some passages that were read to them, and here's what impressed you about those passages. And that takes you right into sharing the gospel with someone. I think it's very important that you be clear about who you are. A lot of young people go off to college and they kind of become a chameleon. I'm going to fit in. Romans 12 says, don't be conformed to the world. I don't want people picking on me, I want to kind of, and that's the wrong way to do it. Because usually after a while, people do find out who you are. And they're not impressed with you, like, well, you're a liar. You're a poser. You're a hypocrite. And I think it's always good. I think of Joseph. Joseph is a great example of someone when he is in Egypt. He's always making it clear to people who he is. Potiphar's wife, how can I do that great sin, and sin against God? Genesis 39:9. And then even later when he interacts with Pharaoh and the cupbearer and the baker, repeatedly he says, hey, the only one who can interpret dreams is God. And he keeps introducing God into the conversation. Daniel is the same way. When Daniel interacts with people, Daniel's always talking about his God. Daniel chapter 2 and verse 28. And may I suggest to you that's very helpful because on the one hand, it immediately kind of sets some good, healthy boundaries that there's going to be certain people that might have thought about luring you into something bad that are going to say, I'm not even going to try with him. He's always talking about God. And so, number one, it does protect you. Also, if you're dating, if you're very clear about your faith in God, the only person that you're going to attract are other strong character, good people. You're going to scare away the posers. You're going to scare away the flakes, and you don't want to date a flake. You're going to scare away the crazy girlfriend, okay? You're not going to have any problems with her. She's not going to give you the time of day. Good. Book of Ecclesiastes talks about that there's a woman whose hands are chains, and it says that the righteous man escapes her, but the sinner does not escape her. And so you're just going to be spared a lot of heartache and a lot of people that are going to be very frustrating to deal with and very manipulative. I mean, you're just going to say, hey, here's who I am. My goal is to serve God and live right, and I'm saving myself until marriage and things like that. And a number of people hear that, and they're going to leave you alone, and that's going to leave room for the people that, hey, I'm interested in that guy. The world says if you do that, you're not going to be fun. No, the Bible is if you're going to do that, you're going to avoid pain and heartache, and your life is going to be great. You do that, and you attract, if you're a man and you make it clear about who you are, you will attract the woman who's looking for a man, not a boy. Okay, not all women are, some women are looking for boys. Okay, that is immature, irresponsible, whatever. But I want to tell you, if you're a young man out there right now, okay, I want to tell you right now, there's a huge shortage of real men in our world right now. Real young men who are real men. There's a real shortage out there. I don't know how many girls I run into are just frustrated as far as they can't find a real man. I'm looking for someone who's prepared himself to support a family. I'm looking for someone that actually has some job options. I'm looking for someone that really was wise with the career path they're taking. I'm looking for someone who doesn't spend all their money every weekend. I'm looking for someone who's not spending every waking moment doing a video game or hanging out at the bar or drinking or etc. I'm looking for a man. I'm looking for someone who's going to be a leader in the community. I'm looking for a man that can be a husband, a leader. I'm looking for someone that doesn't avoid work on the weekends and responsibility. I'm looking for a guy that maybe even owns his own home and mows his yard and takes care of it before he's going to go out and he's going to do things on the weekend that are enjoyable and good and wholesome. But, it's work first, play later. I'm looking for a man. I'm looking for a man who works first and plays later. I'm working for a man who pays the bills. I'm working for a man that when we go on a date, picks up the check. I'm looking for that. I'm looking for a man. I'm looking for an honorable man. Tell you what, people like that are in demand in our world today. They really are in demand, and they've always been in demand. Don't let anyone fool you. There are many practical ways that you can immediately let people know that you're a believer in Jesus Christ. Hey, when they say, hey, we're going to do something. You can say, hey, well, I've got Bible study tonight from about 7 to 8, but I'm available after that. Or, hey, can we get together later? I got a men's class at 5 or whatever. Or I got a Bible study at 6. Or I've got worship. Well, I've got worship this morning, from about 9, but about by 11:30, 11:30, I can meet you for lunch somewhere. Very easy to introduce God, the fact that you're a Christian, into a conversation. Hey, I'm helping someone move from church this morning, but I'm available this afternoon. I got time to study with you this afternoon and work on our homework. I have found that Christians are so unique in this world that, if you're not laughing at dirty jokes, and if you can speak without swearing, and if you speak about and treat women with respect, if you can interact with a woman without flirting with her, if you don't talk about partying and getting drunk and stuff like that, it's not long before someone will say, are you a Christian? That's how unique Christians are in this world. That's how much they stand out. May I suggest to you there are many advantages of shining your light. I think of Philippians chapter 2, which speaks of God's people as being like lights or stars. There it says in verse 15, so that you will prove yourselves to be blameless and innocent children of God, above reproach in the midst of a crooked and perverse generation, among whom you appear as lights in the world. If you're a light, if you're salt and you're a light, you'll attract people looking for the truth. You'll attract good hearts. People not interested in truth will drop out of your circle. You will collect a group of friends that are willing to have Jesus in the conversation. That would be real, authentic people. Yeah, hey, I know when Mark's around, Jesus is there in the conversation with him. I'm willing to take them as a package deal. Yeah, I'm willing to take them as a package deal. When you let your light shine, when you marry someone, you realize that you're marrying someone that's committing to you for life, just like you're committing to them for life. And you don't have to worry about divorce and things like that. You don't have to worry about that in your future. It also, I think, kind of helps us stay on our toes. If you let people know you're a Christian, then you know people are watching you. They're watching your language. They're watching your priorities, okay? They're watching, did you just look at that woman that passed by that didn't have a whole lot on? Or did you keep your eyes in another direction? You realize people are watching you. That's healthy because that's called accountability. That is, hey, I'm going to walk the walk. I'm going to live what I preach. And I think being upfront immediately is more of a authentic and honest way of dealing with people. I think a lot of times people resent, if here I am a Christian and I'm trying to lure someone into a friendship without really letting them know who I am. I think people resent that, and I've had people do that with me, like with multi-level marketing and Amway and stuff like that. Hey, you seem like a nice guy. Would you like to get together? And the only reason they want to get together is they want to sell me something. I don't like that. I resent that too. And so I think when you're very upfront with people about who you are and what you're all about, and that you just naturally talk about God, and this is the way to live, and hey, you need to be serving God too. I think people appreciate that upfront sort of approach rather than, hey, buddy, and then springing it on them later that you actually are trying to convert them. Hey, I like to know up front, hey, yeah, are you trying to convert me? Of course I am. I'm trying to, everyone needs to be a child of God. That's Paul's attitude. Everyone needed to be a Christian except the chains he was wearing. He wanted everyone to be just like him. Book of Acts. Knowing that when people know you're a Christian, it's just like when people know, let's say, when people know that you like motorcycles, typically they will ask you about, well, have you been on a ride lately, okay? If people know that you love golf, they ask you, hey, you been out golfing lately? If people know you're a Christian, they're naturally going to ask you things like, well, how's the church doing, or something like that. That's, how those sermons doing? I mean, they're naturally going to ask you about your spiritual life when they know that's very important for them. James 1:19 says that we need to be slow to speak and quick to hear and slow to anger. When you go off to college or when you just go off and live on your own, you're going to be introduced to a lot of new ideas. Some of them are old ideas, but maybe it's the first time you've heard them. I mean, there's not a whole lot of new ideas out there. A lot of them are old ideas that you'll even find in the Bible, old false ideas that have been repackaged and kind of worded a little bit different, but they're kind of the same old idea. And may I suggest you that you listen very carefully and you take notes. When you're in a class and a professor is introducing something that you're going like, well, wow, this doesn't sound true, take notes. Take very careful notes. If you need to ask for clarification, now, are you saying this? That's okay. But just kind of take very careful notes. And may I suggest you that a lot of times people have study groups, but you can have a spiritual study group with other believers. And you can get together and kind of take a look at what was discussed in your classes. What kind of came up in a class that you kind of like, this idea came up and this was what was presented. What do you guys think about that? And what would be a good response for that? What might be the best way to respond to that sort of idea? Because, we know it's not a true idea. It's a false idea. But what would kind of be a really good response to that? I think that'd be great to get together with other believers on a regular basis and kind of look at certain things that are brought up in your classes that are opposed to the truth found in Scripture. So I would take very careful notes. I would also share when I come home, when I go back home, or from now and then when I talk to mom and dad, or maybe the people back at my local congregation, and especially the preacher, I would share with the preacher there of kind of some of the ideas that you're hearing in college, because sometimes those are kind of where it starts, and then from there it kind of seeps into the culture. And I might say, hey, here's the argument they're making on this now. Here's the argument they're making on that now. And that enables that preacher to kind of then present lessons on that and inform the congregation on something that might be eventually surfacing in the culture, so that no one's kind of taken surprised by the latest wrong argument about something. I would also keep a journal about my college experience or living on my own. I would write down like what was helpful. I would write down like what to watch out for, especially if I have younger siblings that are going to follow me to school one day. I would kind of say, hey, I would kind of give like I could give maybe a notebook to them, a list, Mark suggestions or whatever, how to make college a great experience, but also how kind of survive spiritually at the same time, what to look out for, etc., what responses to have, how to use your time wisely, that sort of thing. I would kind of make a list so that I could give that to future students, and that kind of show them the ropes before they end up there, so that they're ready, And I'd talk to my mom and dad often, and I would solicit the prayers, and I would have daily Bible reading and my daily prayer as well. I hope that was helpful. I hope that was helpful on leaving home. My name is Mark. Preach for the Church of Christ in Beaverton on 5th Street, 11775 Southwest 5th Street. We're on the internet, beavertonchurchofchrist.net. A lot of great resources. Most of the sermons I do are there in a printed format. If you would like to learn more about us, number one, you could just come and visit and say, hey, saw you on TV. Hey, I want to introduce myself. And Sunday morning, 9 a.m. Bible study, all ages, 10 for a period of worship, 5:30 Sunday evening, 7 o'clock midweek, Wednesday night. All that information's on the website. Or you could give me a call and say, hey, Mark, do you have a chance to get together for coffee or something? I'd like to talk. And we could meet at a location, like a very public location. So that would be good. Meet for coffee. A lot of really neat places in the area, especially with summer coming on and outside seating. And I got some time in my schedule, and you could say, spiritually I got this question, or, I'm interested in being a Christian, but here's some things that are kind of, I got questions about. And we would just open up the scriptures, and I would just basically say, well, have you considered this passage or this point or whatever, and then you read it. And again, no obligation to get together again. Not going to pressure you, etc. It would just be like, hey, if you're looking for some help, if you're looking for someone to kind of point you, like, hey, can you kind of point me in the right direction there as far as some verses to be looking at on this or that question or this time in my life? I'm here. I'm available. My name is Mark with the Church of Christ in Beaverton, 503-644-9017. Thank you again for listening. Come and visit us sometime or give me a call. Until next time, we'll see you later.